Welcome to Emerging Civil War News. I'm Chris Mikowski, and joining me today is Tom Van Winkle, president of the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust, which we'll refer to as CVBT today. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for spending some time to chat with us today. CVBT recently announced its new 60 for 30 campaign. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, 2026 will be our 30th anniversary of being a preservation group, and we are looking to raise $2,000 for each year that we've been in business, thus 60 for 30, and not infringing on ESPN's 30 for 30, which was the change for 60 for 30. But we want to celebrate 30 years of what we've been doing and the accomplishments we've had, and also by trying to get to $60,000 that will go to current and future projects that need to have some paying off, as we could say.
And the idea is $2,000 for each of the 30 years that CVBT has been around.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, let's peel back the layers of history for a second. And what was the very first project CVBT did for folks who might not be familiar with the organization?
Well, we were incorporated in 1996 in September. The first project that came up, was called Willis Hill. For those who know about Frederick's Battle of Fredericksburg in 1863, most people always understand the stone wall and Burnside's attacks against the stone wall. But behind the stone wall up on a hill is called Marie's Heights. And a portion of that is called Willis Hill. And that's where the Confederate artillery was positioned. And also, the Park Service has a visitor center there, but they did not own that hill. So the Park Service wanted to buy that hill. To make a long story short, the Park Service to this day can only pay up to an appraised value for a property. And that property has to be within their congressional boundaries to purchase. Well, the price asked for that property there was a big gap between what the park could pay and what the seller wanted. So two groups actually had become on the radar at that time frame in 1996, the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust, and what was then known as the Association for the Preservation of Civil War Sites. I think I got that one right. That's hard to do. And we both got involved in that. The idea was to bridge the gap that the Park Service needed in order to purchase that site. Now, that was our first purchase. It doesn't sound like much today, but we had pledged $25,000 to help out with that. The situation was we had a zero bank account balance. So we didn't have $25,000, but we pledged it anyway, hoping that we could get it. So between ourselves and the APCWS, we bridged the gap. And now today you have that entire upper part of Marie's Heights saved and incorporated into the Park Service. So that was our first thing that we had done. And miraculously, our board members actually came up with the $25,000 and took care of that.
Now, since then, CVBT's mission has grown to encompass five major battlefields of the Civil War. You want to give us the rundown?
Yeah, originally what we had done was we were actually formed to help the Park Service out in these type of situations that we just talked about. So we were Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Wilderness, and Spotsylvania Courthouse, the four major battles that took place here. That, as you well know, in an 18-month period, those four battles took place, and you had over 200,000 combatants in an area that only had 15,000 civilians, and it left 100,000 casualties. So was decimated the area, but also we looked at Mine Run. If you study the wilderness, you realize that the wilderness was just an offshoot of the failed Union Mine Run campaign. A lot of the crossings and a lot of things decided that Mine Run fed into the wilderness. And Mine Run, which has been pretty much left alone for years, is just recently starting to gain some development momentum. So it needs to have several areas protected. So we decided to add Mine Run to our inventory of battlefields because we do feel it is part of the wilderness campaign. So actually, we are working on at least one project out in Mine Run right now that it's within the working of getting finished.
Mm. And the Fredericksburg area has seen a lot of tremendous development pressure, and the loss of the Salem Church battlefield, which was part of the Chancellorsville campaign, really kind of stands out as the red alert poster child for why preservation needs to happen. Um, how important has CVBT's presence been since then in helping with those preservation efforts?
Well, if you look at the area, we are in literally the fastest growing area of Virginia. You can look at it during the Civil War. There were four battles fought here. Well, why? Well, we were directly in between two capitals, Washington, D.C. and Richmond. Well, the battles for development now is sort of for the same reason. We're between Washington, D.C. and Richmond. We were a bedroom community for these particular two areas where everybody would go out and work. But now it is just centralized development. Today, we have scored over 2,000 acres of saved battlefield property here. So from a development standpoint, the area would look much different now if we hadn't saved those 2,000 acres. From an historical standpoint, the addition of this historical acreage allows us to tell a much broader story of the battles and what occurred here than we could before. Now, as we honor ECW's, authors and all their books, which are fantastic, but what is really fantastic is when you read one of, say, Chris's books, you can go out and stand on the very site, the very battlefield. That book tells you what happened there. And that's so our presence here in this regional area has been a huge presence in what it looks like and what we can interpret, what we have left of our historical sites.
Explain to folks how CVBT works with other preservation groups, particularly the American Battlefield Trust, which tends to have a much larger scope, whereas CVBT tends to be more boots on the ground.
Yeah, we're boots on the ground mainly because we're focused on this area, but we also have the people involved, in our board of directors from the very beginning in 1996 were peoples and families that have lived here for literally ever. So the relationships of the public and the people here were tight. Um, so we were able to negotiate and talk to people at a much different level, at a much more personal level. And it's just absolutely a different way of doing things here. And as far as other groups go, a lot of people go, oh, well, you're part of ABT. Well, no, we were never part of ABT. When they were the Civil War Preservation Trust and we were Central Virginia Battlefield Preservation Trust, everybody mixed them up because they almost sounded the same. One of the best things that ever happened is they changed their name to ABT. But we are in sync. ABT and CVBT have always and will continue to work in partnership. A lot of the battlefields saved around here, especially in Chancellorsville, has been a partnership between ABT and CVBT. Both getting the money together, making the negotiations. A point in fact is the Stonewall Jackson flank attack, most famous and studied flank attack in history, basically. For 29 years now, almost 30 years, both our organizations have been buying parcels along that flank attack along Route 3 with the end goal of stitching it all together and being able to walk a large portion of that flank attack uninterrupted by private property. We are very close to that happening now. People would say, you're never going to do it. Well, I've been quoted as saying that battlefield preservation is a game of chess. It's not checkers. You have a very long game here and a very long time before you may accomplish what your goal is. But we're getting very close to that. So ABT, CVBT, groups like Friends of Wilderness, which I was a part of years ago, we all work in synergy because the bottom line is it doesn't matter who gets the credit. It's just what matters is we get the job done. And luckily, all organizations feel the same way.
With 30 years of successes under your belt, what's on the horizon? What's the next big project?
Well, we're trying to be proactive as best we can. Unfortunately, the way development works these days is you no longer see those for sale signs up on somebody's front lawn or some piece of commercial property. They wind up being in some sort of negotiations already through a realtor when you find out about them. So you got to be proactive and you have to look at these properties, vet which property will add to the story or add to that battlefield we already have. So we have designed we have a very long list of properties we would like. But what we like and what we need to have are going to be two different things going forward. Real estate is exceedingly expensive. There's rarely anything we're looking at right now that's anywhere under $1 million. Um, the low-hanging fruit of placid rolling fields with nothing on them are gone. Everything has a dwelling on it. So we have to be very careful of what we're looking at, what it's going to take to purchase it, what it's going to take to take down and restore it to its period view, and also what it's going to take to maintain it in the future. So we're sort of a victim of our own success now. The low-hanging fruit is gone. The things we really need to have are going to be very intense when it comes to the costs and the future expenses of it. So the game has changed a little bit.
If someone wants to contribute to the 60 for 30 campaign, or if they'd like to get involved with CVBT, how can they do that?
I would suggest going to our website at cvbt.org. Everything you ever want to know about us or don't want to know about us is there. Prominent on the first page is our 60 for 30 campaign. You'll also see we're still raising money for our last two purchases. As you well know, we purchased several acres over on Brock Road, which is part of a undisturbed area with 15 new nets on it, and no dwellings, which is unheard of. And we also just purchased the first opportunity we've had for the 23rd United States Colored Troops. We purchased a couple acres from the Battle of Spotsylvania, and that is a very rare find for us to be able to do that. And that's purchase number one of a larger scale of that battlefield out there. So, yeah, you can see all the things we need money for right on our website. But you can also see everything we've done. All our battlefields are there, and a very interesting. Our chief executive officer handles what's called History Wire. It has some extremely interesting views of different battles and things that happen at battles on there. So I invite everybody to. Very informative website. I think you'd enjoy it.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on 30 successful years and best wishes for 30 plus more for you. Congratulations, Tom.
We appreciate it, and we appreciate everybody's support, because without that support, we wouldn't be talking.
So I'm Chris Mikowski on behalf of Tom Van Winkle and the Central Virginia Battlefields Trust. Thanks for being with us here at Emerging Civil War News. We'll see you online and on the battlefield.